set the foreground for the premise of Death Stranding and take us through kind of the story in general and your takeaway from what the story is, what it means, its themes. Like, this is a full spoilers episode for this 6-year-old game, and I'll have that mentioned in the description. But like, what's the premise for Death Stranding, and how does the story go? How does it end, and what's your takeaway from it altogether? Like, you have the floor.
Yeah, I mean, starting off, I guess the premise of Death Stranding is essentially everything was quiet. Life as we knew it was as it is now in the United States of America, and the world, I assume. And we had a big bang, essentially a second big bang, and things collapsed. Cities collapsed. Void outs happened. BTs started showing up everywhere. Beaches were created, which is essentially that world's version of purgatory. And when that was happening, at the same time, there was also a lot of undercover experiments by the government to basically keep mothers in a form of scientific pod, essentially, and they're called still mothers. And what they do is they take their children from them. So the United States of America or the United Cities of America did this. And they use them as BBs, which are called bridge babies, which are to connect to the other side. And when that happened, there was one scientist called Clifford Unger, who is the father of the main character. Again, full spoilers. And he's played by Mads Mikkelsen. And he can't go through with it, essentially. He can't go through with allowing his wife to become a still mother, and his child, the BB, who is you, which you find out at the end of the game, to be a victim of this system anymore. And essentially, he tries to escape. And it fails. And what happens is in the failed escape, you, as a child, ends up being killed alongside the father, Clifford. And another big bang happens, because what happens is how do I describe this? The person behind these experiments, who's your adoptive mother in the game, also has, so there's like two parts of every person. There's the being, which is the car, and then there's the soul, which is the ha. And essentially what happens is she allows her ha, which is Amelie, to resurrect you. And that breaks every single law of physics in post-Death Stranding world, and essentially creates another Death Stranding, which then allows BTs en masse to flood into the world. And then on top of that, it causes a shit ton of people with special powers to also start to come into things, and you end up getting this horrific chain of events that's a scientific mess, essentially, and spiritual mess. So you grow up, you become Norman Reedus, and you are tasked with essentially connecting the east and the west of America completely, and you have to travel all the way, connecting every single city and point together, so you can create something called a chiral network to connect everyone so they can rebuild. In your way, there are homo demons and mules, which are essentially terrorists and also people that are, respectively obsessed with packages. It's called Porter Syndrome. And you have to navigate all of that. You have to navigate ghosts, which are the BTs. You have to navigate extinction events. You have to navigate the homo demons. You have to navigate the mules. And all of it is to get to your sibling across the world, which is Amelie. But as I've just said, Amelie is the soul side of your adopted mother, who at the time was the president of the United States. When you get to the end, you realize that Amelie is actually an extinction entity. She is a world ender. And by the end of the game, after you've defeated the villain, which is Higgs, you've got past the homo demons and everything, the BTs, you've made it all the way. You find out that she's basically on a ticking time bomb. She has no other option because of her nature than to blow the world up. However, through love and through familial connection and everything, Sam asks her to take a chance and to stop and let humans take their time and figure out a solution and also just live. And Amelie, in a very selfless act, despite her nature, decides to sit on the beach for eternity, potentially, alone, with no connection to the human world, no connection to Sam, and wait. And at the end of the game, when you play it, there's a part... Death Stranding doesn't end in a very traditional video game sense. It how do I say this? Like, it just ends with you kind of walking around on a beach, and Brian has expressed, like, what the hell's the point in this? That is a gameplay metaphor for you trying, like, for Kojima to represent how long Amelie has to sit on this beach. And while the credits roll and you have nothing to do, you have to reflect on the idea that Amelie has to do this for eternity. And all you do is you spend maybe 30 minutes on this beach, 20 to 30 minutes, but for the gamer, it is an eternity. And so many people prove his point, and they prove the metaphor. Right, they literally go, this is boring, I can't believe I have to do this. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? It's like Groundhog Day, over and over again. You do the same thing. You run across the beach, and then you end up in the same place. That's Amelie for eternity, because she decides to spare humanity because she loves her sibling, which is, you know, Sam. And that's the story, essentially. And then when you get towards the end of it, whilst you're doing this, you've also got a BB yourself, right? I forgot to mention that. To help you navigate BTs and stuff. As you go through the game, you get more and more attached to BB. You get more and more attached to this child that originally you were meant to incinerate because it was defective. But Sam grows attached to it. And as Sam grows attached to this BB, as he goes through his journey, he also opens up. He is no longer scared of touching. He no longer has a phobia. And what happens is by the end of it, you have your final walk. BB by this point has died, and Sam is completely broken by it. And he goes to the final place, which is back at the start of the game. He goes to the incinerator, and he has to dispose of the BB, because if he dies, or she dies rather, then the BTs will eat the body, cause a void out, etc., etc. And in a last-ditch gift from Amelie to Sam, she revives BB so that he can have a tether to the real world as a final, loving, last-ditch gift. And it's this really awesome, beautiful last walk that you do to the incinerator, because the craziest thing is the incinerator that you are going to burn BB at is the same incinerator that you incinerate your mother at the start of the game. And it's this very cyclical journey that goes from Sam being broken at the start and having to destroy, his loved one, to going to the incinerator thinking he's going to have to do the same thing, and then in reality he finds his last respite, which is in his child. And the entire game is essentially, it's high sci-fi, masking spirituality on a obscene level, and it's a game about connection and fatherhood and love, and I just love it.
I cannot imagine. Michael, can you imagine giving a synopsis as good as Joe just did?
No.
I'm sitting here yeah, I am sitting here so impressed, because I'm like, everything he mentions, I'm like, I remember that, but I would have left out 38 items as I tried to retell that myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude, it's the thing about Death Stranding that I think is so ironic is that, it's seen as a walking simulator, and there's so many cutscenes, and the story is weird, but despite me really enjoying the cutscenes and really enjoying the story and the lore behind it, so much of my memory and so much of the things I enjoyed about this game is the gameplay.
Same.
And and the moments that you experience through the gameplay, it doesn't sound particularly exciting maybe in a podcast, but if you played the game, the moments that stand out for me are walking across a valley and music kicks in that you didn't expect to kick in, and it sets this whole tone. Rain falling. I remember having to deliver a package around this giant snowy mountain, and there was this clear path I could take way around it, but instead I chose my cargo the items I wanted to take. I put them on a bike, and I drove right up that mountain and over the other side of it through the snowy weather, and like, just that's not what everyone did. That's not how everyone delivered their packages, and that's not the experience that the experience for everyone is the same, but it's different. You know, the emotions that the game evokes, the options that it gives you for how you play, and it's funny because I want to say like how you play and how you deliver packages, but like I feel like just saying delivering packages robs the game of so much more, because everything feels so emotional and so in touch with humanity. I think that one thing that comes to mind that I have just as reference I had up when we started the episode was the Wikipedia for the first Death Stranding. Something that is said here that I definitely felt was reflected is it says, the game had sold 5 million copies worldwide. Numerous commentators later noted that elements of the game resembled the COVID-19 pandemic, which began during the months following its original release. Playing this game, I mean, I knew about this game obviously before the pandemic and after, but playing this game, it did really resonate with me after having gone through the pandemic, how similar it felt. You know, all of these other human characters are in these little, is it fair to say underground cities? Is that what they are? Joe?
Yeah, or like, you know, like bunkers maybe.
Little bunkers.
I don't know.
Yeah, so like you spend so much of the game interacting with people through these holograms, but you're not actually like seeing them right before you or touching them, and they're all kind of bunkered away because the world it's much grander than the pandemic that we experienced, but in the same way we experienced, like being home, not able to leave, you know, having packages delivered to our doors, having our groceries brought to our doors, keeping distance from people. You felt that in Death Stranding, and isn't it the most Kojima thing in the world that he could release a game like this that feels like what we were about to go through that no one could have accounted for like a year later? It's
wild, right?
Yeah, it's remarkable. And the themes of like building bridges and connections, and I mean it took everything that we experienced in the pandemic and made it resonate and made themes from it before we even experienced that. And I do think it really hit. And I think that to anyone who hasn't played this game and sees or hears people talk about it as a walking simulator, or even maybe just heard the description of the story that Joe gave that sounds very convoluted potentially to many of you, it doesn't encapsulate what you'll feel and experience playing the game. And it might not hit for you right away, and like Michael had said at the beginning, it's not for everyone. Maybe it would never hit for you, but like when this game hits, it hits different, and there is no other game like it, truly. Like Kojima was able to release a AAA game in 2019 that truly feels original and like nothing else. And I think that as time has gone on, it's been 6 years pretty much since this game has come out, a lot of people have reflected on it and went back and reevaluated it, replayed it. I think, and Joe will know better than anyone, that the name Death Stranding, the IP, the idea of a sequel, it is so hotly anticipated right now. People love this franchise, love the first game, can't wait for the second one. They're frothing at the mouth for it, but that's not the sentiment in 2019. And I don't think you would have expected it to be this way 6 years later, but it did happen. Like, so much has changed to have this like be reevaluated over the years. Any thoughts from either of you on anything I said? I know, Michael, it's been a little bit since you've talked. I mean, what do you think about those ideas of like how the game was received when it released, and you know how the game's special in ways you might not expect? You know, it reflecting COVID even though it hadn't happened yet. Any thoughts on that, Michael?
Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, you all can say if you disagree, but I think this is a game. It's hard to sell it to somebody just by telling them about it.
Yeah,
because I don't see how I could describe this game to somebody and they'd be like, "Oh man, that sounds like so much fun! Like I need to buy it." I feel like it's just something you kind of have to experience it for yourself, because, I mean, like you said, when you describe the gameplay, it's like, "Oh yeah, you deliver packages to this facility, that facility, blah blah blah." I mean, I don't see how anybody's going to be sold just by saying that, but I don't know how else to describe it if you don't play it. Yeah. But and the thing is like this is one of those games where there's people I know that. I know if they played this game, it'd be like their least favorite game they've ever played. There are certain people I know, like, man, this game is so boring. Like, I can't get into it. But there are some people I know that, like, I bet if you played it, it'd be one of your favorite games.
Yeah.
And I think honestly that's what Kojima wants, because what you guys said earlier, where you can see the flaws in his work and he almost embraces that. Did you all see what he said about Death Stranding 2 in the previews for it?
Yeah.
He was like, people were playing it and they thought it was really good. He said people thought it was too good. So he said he went back and changed it and made it just made it worse in some ways because he thought it was too good, because he said if it's that good and everybody loves it, then it's too mainstream.
Yep.
And
very Kojima.
I respect that, because it's like he wants there to be certain flaws and stuff, because I think his biggest thing is he wants to be unique. And honestly, I respect that, because I mean you don't really see that from anybody else, really, at least not that I can think of. That mindset.
The problem I have with like modern gamers, or just gamers in general, is they're so quick to like say something is slop, like Assassin's Creed or something that's so formulaic. But then on the same hand, they'll, like, I'm not saying you have to love Death Stranding in this case, but like if you're like one that says like Assassin's Creed is slop, right, which is fine, like I kind of agree, right, like every few years they come out, or Call of Duty, every few years, whatever, go for it. But like also be consistent in many ways and say like, okay, then let's look at like Death Stranding, and it's like, okay, like it's not perfect, you don't have to love it, but at least like stand there and say at least you kind of respect at least the fact that he doesn't. This is the thing, I think he just wants to make art, right? Like he wants to make something that is so intrinsic to himself and so intrinsic to the people who work with him that he finds something that fills him spiritually. I think that's in many ways what he wants to be, and I think like that's what you have to kind of go into Death Stranding for. Like when you watch the trailers and you jump into the game, you kind of got to open your heart to it in many ways. Yeah. If you go in expecting pure dopamine hit and just constantly being like, yeah, this is great, I'm killing all this, and expecting what you get in other games, you're never really going to get that. For me, Death Stranding is very much a spiritual experience as much as it is a gaming experience. It sounds very highbrow of me and like, I don't know, very like... up my own arse in many ways, but snobby. Very Kojima. But I do genuinely think that, like the rewards of Death Stranding to me scream that. When you play the game and like the first BT encounter, I bet you guys remember this, in the first area when you go through the first proper BT encounter over that hill, and Asylum for the Feeling comes on, by Silent Poets, and then you walk down that really steep hill and you get to the first city. Like that's your reward. Like it's not about getting the next progression, about getting the next gun, getting the next level up. Like that all comes, don't get me wrong, but like the main thing is experiencing that moment where Kojima's like intentionally put in like a musical score at that point and gone like, this is what I want you to feel at this point. I want you to feel the awe, I want you to feel the exhaustion that you've gone through this BT field. And that to me is way more potent, way more impressive, way more significant to me personally than any skill tree you can put in a video game.